Professor Rosewood. So you'll go and meet him, and then essentially you'll be doing a quest for him. And if you complete that quest, you'll. I'm not going to spoil it too much. It's in the result. And that once you complete that, you'll then have access to the Rosewood class ship. Rosewood, what we're looking at is kind of render. Probably the one that explains. So this image probably explains the most. Essentially, the Rosewood is a Generation 6 ship. So this ship marks basically the end of the line of like the most powerful ships that you can own. So this will be the highest generation and the highest the research basically goes in TextSpaced. Probably for a very long time, if not indefinitely. So this is kind of like the end of the line. This is like the best ship, the one to own. Of course, you have to complete all these different quests and objectives to get it, and it will be extraordinarily expensive to buy as well. But essentially, this is like an Uber kind of capital, where if you follow the law, it talks about how Professor Rosewood was demoted down to plate tech. It talks about various things like this. So, essentially, this ship is going to feature all of the. I can go over it again. So essentially, this ship features all of the most cutting-edge technology. So as you can see here, kind of in the render, you can see like the lights along the hull. This is because the ship features something that traditionally only descendant family ships feature, which is nano technology, in terms of that it can heal its hull and it can repair its armor, this kind of stuff. It will feature other kind of technology as well, such as quantum travel. It has things like Legionnaire turrets as well. It has, that's featured here, tactical launch capability, which is something the Capital does have currently, but it was never kind of implemented, although there is one variant that does implement it. But essentially that's has been implemented in this redesign of the Capital ship as well. And basically, as a Generation 6 ship, this will have far higher stats than any of the ships currently in the game, including the flagship. It will have far more capacity for things like ports and rooms and this kind of stuff. So this is kind of the ship that you want to buy. This brings me to like the rewards. So firstly, there's once these are fully rendered and I've completed all the scenes, these will be provided as wallpapers for all supporters exclusively as well. So there'll probably be 3 different wallpapers from different angles here that I've got, but there are other scenes that I'm working on that may end up with more. Essentially, this Rosewood class ship kind of hovering above the city as like a pacifier, essentially. So those will be provided. And of course, these images will be used to represent the ship as well. I thought about additional physical rewards kind of in the channel as well, which I'll get onto a bit, which is kind of a slightly different topic. However, if people especially like this ship, it may change to something like a 3D model of this ship instead. So that's the Rosewood class ship. So to answer the question, the way this works is that there was lore released to supporters, but also in a book as well. It talks about the kind of the guy, Professor Rosewood, how he got fired and how all that kind of stuff. Essentially, from there you can collect the hollow concepts of this ship, which are called the Rosewood concepts, so 1, 2, 3, 4, that kind of stuff. And then once you have all those 4, because they are elements and you can use them in a recipe, I'm not in the supporters chat. Are you a supporter? Okay. I'll check. I thought you cancelled it, but maybe you reinstated it. Yeah, I can add you in. No problem. There you go. So yeah, once you put all the hollow concepts together, it will give you a location, and then that location will be the first of 3 trials to complete. So the first location, will go there, you'll complete whatever the trial is, and then you'll get a second location, you'll go there, and do whatever the trial is. And then the third one, you complete that, and then it gives you the location of actually how to get to Professor Rosewood. And then you can go to him as to like any other crew member, and you can do missions for him, and those missions will vary in difficulty, obviously, as they level up. And by doing that, effectively, you'll be unlocking this ship for yourself. This ship will actually probably, haven't decided between it yet, but will probably show in the collector's ships as something that you've completed a quest for or completed a raid for. It may turn up in the factions, like crafted ships, but I think that makes it too easy for a whole faction to get this kind of powerful ship. So I think it will stick in the collector's one, so it's like a per user kind of thing. So yeah, that's the Rosewood class ship. So just to reiterate, this will be a Gen 6 ship. This will probably be will be the best ship that you can own in the game, probably forever, if not a very long time. So this is like the end of how far the research kind of goes in TextSpaced, essentially. Any questions about that? I can see a couple of people typing. I can talk to some extent about the features of the ship if people are interested. Never mind. Okay. You can ask whatever you want, it doesn't matter. In terms of the physical reward that I was talking about earlier, so any hints on get the concepts? The concepts are elements, so they're gained in similar ways as you would gain other elements. That's all I'm going to say, really. Yeah. In terms of the physical knowledge, which is a physical reward, which is kind of a different subject that I talked about. Essentially, there's on my shelf only like a couple of the original text-based books left now, which is the black ones with the black logo that have the ship art in them for all of the base ships. So essentially, for supporters that have been subscribed for a year or more, they're going to get the new book. So the new book is going to be printed probably towards the end of the year and get those all printed up. The books are actually they're quite popular, so they're a good thing to keep going. And if you're not aware, that you can get one of the books by donating £20 or more, essentially. But for supporters that have been subscribed for a year or more, just to cover the cost, basically, they'll be getting the new version of the book. So the new version of the book will have a holographic logo on the front instead of a black one, so you can actually distinguish the difference. And it will contain sector art instead. So this will be all the new sector art that I've been working on. So the wormhole, the black holes, all the new planets, all that kind of stuff. And that will be, I'll get this printed towards the end of the year and get those sent out. So that'll be the physical reward for supporters. I'd like to do that more going forward as well, so the people that are stuck with the game, they can get some sort of physical reward kind of each year. Because the subscription is only £1 a month, it can't be anything too extravagant, but I think something like a book or a small model each year should be good. Cool. So any questions about anything that I've spoken about yet? People typing. Yeah, so I can expand on some of the tech here as well. So I can run through some of the features. These are quite low because they're just on this concept. It's actually quite nice because this is like the first view of what a city is imagined to kind of look like, kind of in text-based. Kind of traditional, kind of mixes kind of man-made with natural, with like forests and gardens all in between. It uses the kind of maglev monorail stuff that speaks about in the game as well. Obviously, it speaks about how the vehicles are mostly hydrogen powered. There's most smog floating above the city, that kind of stuff, and some impressive structures floating around for different purposes, which will probably have extended lore about what some of these things are as well. In terms of the actual ship, it has a number of kind of cutting edge things. So towards the back here, just out of interest, if people are wondering what this is, all ships in TextSpaced, which many ships in sci-fi kind of forget about, have deceleration thrusters. The most obvious one being on things like the Scout and the Corvette, where because they're first responders and they go in fast, they need quite powerful deceleration thrusters, so they have those kind of forward mounted. Large ships like this, because they're not as fast, they have the deceleration kind of thrusters kind of at the back and at the front as well. So when you see these grills, they use actually thrusters for deceleration, where they essentially recycle the thrust from the main engine like forward, so they can slow down essentially. In terms of actual new tech, obviously you can see it has a new color to show that an experimental ship. So this will be classed as an experimental ship. Yeah, this one has front. The capital has front and back. If there's anything I want from that string of ideas, is extended monorail. Yeah, of course. So it has the color to represent that it's a experimental ship. It shows obviously that Transgal will always label their ship with the Greek classification, Gamma Beta 4, for example. Here it's showing Legionnaire turrets. So Legionnaire turrets are a new type of turret. And basically, they're turrets that have autonomous self-guiding shells, and also they have built-in reaction cards. And so what this means is every time this ship is hit, the Legionnaire turrets automatically return fire to whoever hit them, which makes them super powerful, essentially. So you can kind of consider these as auto turrets, that whatever you hit this ship with, one of these turrets is going to shoot you back immediately, essentially as a reaction. So you can think of this like, normally you would have countermeasures that would block an attack. But instead, this ship has a reaction which just fires one of these Legionnaire turrets back, which is what it's showing here, kind of in like a stylized fashion. A lot of the ships in TextSpaced, they do actually have external holographic emitters for certain things like guiding ships and this kind of stuff. And in this case, you can see this represented by telling the citizen below to remain calm as it's shooting stuff kind of out of the air. With this particular ship as well, you can see it's using its strategic missile launch at the front. So with the capital ship, which you can kind of see here as well, is that this top part, most people think is a bridge, which is wrong, and obviously they don't read the lore much because the bridge is always in the center of the ship. Instead, this actually moves forward to reveal strategic missile bays, essentially. So this will be things like nukes or any other kind of missile that this ship wants to carry. So the capital ship, for all then one variants, actually have this primed operational. So it's something that's not currently used in the capital ship, and that's mentioned in the lore as well. This ship actually has this implemented, so it can slide this forward for the strategic missile. Like I spoke about before, you can see it more clearly in this image, and that this ship actually features heavily nanotechnology to repair itself, repair its hull, and to repair its damage as well, so it can stay in a fight kind of much longer. It has next generation hull as well. You can see it's actually a different color and far more intricate, with kind of like kind of a lattice design across the hull as well. So it's much more dense and has much higher value than most other ships as well. This ship also features quantum travel, so you won't have to independently fit like a quantum overcharger that kind of stuff into the ship, and it's more reliable than actually using a quantum overcharge as well that has like a 1 in 3 chance of breaking every time you use it. So this allows the ship to jump from planet to planet quite nicely. Thanks to my scientific advisor as well, Benji, who's in the chat as well. You can see this ship is actually hovering above a sea, which normally a capital ship wouldn't be able to do. And this is because of its extended ground plating that's mainly fitted along the bottom of the ship to allow it to go close to the surface. It still won't be able to land just because of its mass, because it is like 1.2 kilometers long, and it'd probably break the surface if it did actually land. It does allow it to go into atmosphere and get low to the ground. I have been talking with bees about some sort of structure that would allow like massive ships to be able to land on the surface, but we were in two minds about whether that would actually be useful and OP at the same time. Yeah. Yes, that's why I was hovering. So yeah, that's the Rosewood, and that's the name that we'll have as well. So it would be classed as the Rosewood class ship, and this will be obviously this is like the end of the road by you'll be able to go in ship direction in between and go along, but this will be kind of and like I said as well, you'd have to complete the quest, even be able to get a chance to buy it, and it will be extraordinarily expensive as well, probably 10 times the cost of the lease. So yeah, any questions about them? That's good. I hope they explained it all as well. A suite of changes kind of going forward. Okay, start with extraordinary. Which capital enhanced capital ports? Yeah, to be used in the Rosewood class ship? Probably not, but that's an interesting question to think about. If you're thinking about the exotic ports, it will probably have its own kind of exotics. If you're thinking about ports that you crafted, I think there would probably be new ports, and probably crafting ports in this ship would probably make more powerful ports anyway, so you probably wouldn't want to do that as a thing. There, yeah. I'm also going to chuck this in the chat as well before I talk about the next topic, which is the. I'm just going to stop sharing as well, unless people want to Google it. Occulate image. This is kind of the first draft of what a tank might look like in TextSpaced as well for ground combat. Yeah, the ability to hover over land. So this ties into new features that are coming in the future. So combat is obviously having new features added. You've seen the terse combat already. I think I'll share that screen again just so you can see it playing out for people that may not have been here. So I go back into just doing a random scenario while I talk. A random scenario. By myself, great, against a mine platform. Okay, so that should last a while, so you can kind of see that playing as I'm talking. So yeah, the terse combat is the first one that's rolling out. Again, that should be hopefully sometime this week. Bees is just doing some final testing. As you can see, it's working here relatively nicely. There'll be a few iterations on it kind of going forward just to group together kind of similar things happening kind of as well. There'll also be tiered combat that we spoke about already, where the combat's broken down into tiers based on the tier of your ships, with a maximum of 4 kind of in each tier. But then there'll also be more effects added. So one thing that me and Bees will be doing shortly is to make sure that every single skill, base skill that is in the game, has some sort of effect both outside of combat and inside of combat. So whether you've got a high fighter skill or a high demolition skill or anything like that, we're just going to make sure that translates to something tangible both inside of combat and outside of combat. Outside of combat, I think it does on the most part, but just making sure that it filters into every part of the system to make sure it's covered. Inside of combat, a lot of them are covered as well already, such as marksman and demolitions and fighter and that kind of stuff. But that will be implemented as well. But then there'll be the effect of sectors as well. So sectors will each have their own effects, and again, they'll have effects both outside of combat and inside of combat. So an example of this at the moment is that if you go into an organic nebula cloaked, then it decloaks you, which is an example of an effect kind of outside of combat. Inside of combat, this basically means you can't cloak in combat, like cloak doesn't work. There'll also be other effects as well, and some of the effects will be based on your type of ship. So one of the effects is if you're fighting at an ice planet, for example, if you're in an atmospheric ship, this grants you the effect of having -1 reload on all your weapons. And the kind of thinking behind that is if you're in an atmospheric ship, you can go down the surface, cool your stuff down pretty quick, and then kind of carry on fighting. So it's these kind of perks that the Rosewood would be able to kind of utilize, in that because this ship can now enter the atmosphere, that it can take advantage of both the effects for spatial and atmospheric as well. So if this ship would, if it was fighting in an ice planet sector, it would get -1 cooldown for all its ports, essentially the Rosewood. So that's kind of the advantage of a ship that can hover over land, essentially. Yeah, that was kind of the what would 0 reload mean? Yeah, it doesn't go below 1. That was the kind of feel for the image, was that it was meant to be like, a big bad government ship telling you to stay calm overhead while a massive battle is going on in space, kind of above the planet kind of thing, which is what's meant to be going on in that picture, is that the capital is defending the city by firing basically its ships kind of in orbit or whatever. Probably my fault. So yeah, hopefully that answers your question, Captain. As you see, the terse combat is playing in the background there, and you can see it's just this one's just between me and a mining platform, and you can see it's much cleaner. That this was the whole around vibe here. Admittedly, there was no special phase, but you can see that this is much easier to understand what's going on, especially when it's like one-on-one like this. Cool. So is there any other questions about that? I'll move on to since we've got time and there's no questions, which is cool. I'll move on to the next thing. So obviously, Bees has implemented a lot of combat fixes and is carrying on pushing those out. And then soon he'll be pushing out terse combat as well. I've been spending more time looking at rooms. So obviously every room in the game has some sort of what's labeled in the code as reward. Essentially, is that when you use it, you sometimes get some sort of result or reward or outcome from using that room, which could be the fact of it telling you a precious planet is in a certain region, or there's a planetary cloak in a certain region or something, or it could be that you've made a personal weapon or that kind of stuff. So obviously all the rooms have some sort of reward. And so essentially what I'll be working on probably for the rest of this week is adding additional rewards to rooms. So the rewards in the rooms at the moment are basically just like the standard kind of rewards, just like the level 1 kind of like these, the main rewards that you'll get more regularly. So I'll be adding kind of rarer rewards that you can get from rooms as well. So these will be on top of the rewards, as in like there'll be a chance that you can get this rarer reward, or you can get the normal reward as well. So that's what we'll be working on next. And then essentially after that, me and Bees will be working together basically on doing combat balancing and then weapon balancing to make sure that's all tied up together. In combat, this means bringing in the missing and changing the way that perks work in terms of the perks have tiers. Like I spoke about last week, perks have tiers of like 1, 2, 3. So the first step will be that tier 3 perks will have a chance of working rather than working every single turn. In terms of weapon balancing, for me, that will be making sure that the weapons are balanced in the game, the weapons that you can craft are balanced, and maybe some tinkering going on there. And then looking at kind of all the stock weapons and the weapons that exist kind of in the game at the moment and the offsets between those. And then after that will be what I've just spoken about, which will be the skill inferences both inside combat and outside combat. So that's the next couple of weeks, essentially. So yeah, that's everything that I wanted to talk about this time. I'm happy to ask questions generally about anything you want to talk about, or if you want me to go into further detail about the items that I've talked about tonight, I can do that as well. I think some weapons, yeah, I've been looking at that, yeah. And I think some of them as well is that, and I think some people have realized this as well, and this is kind of the aim, is that generally exotic weapons should be really good, and generally other weapons should be pretty bad. And the idea behind that is that you should be able to get a weapon, let's say that has like a free reload, but it does a lot of damage. You should be able to buy that weapon. You should be able to get it enhanced, or get it customized first, probably, to bring down like the reload, maybe get it enhanced at like your weapon research facility, and then eventually turn it into a masterwork weapon, which is the general aim. So a lot of the weapons don't seem that good, but if you could find a demolitions expert that could bring the reload down, then that's going to make the weapon godly. And that's the general thinking between a lot of the weapons, is that some of the weapons have like 3 or 4 reload, but they do like 200 damage. So obviously when you divide that down, it's like, well, it has 4 reload, 200 damage, it's only actually doing 50 damage a turn. If you can find a demolitions expert that has the right bits to bring that reload down to 1, then suddenly you've got an extremely powerful weapon. And then if you can get that weapon kind of enhanced further, in like research places where it adds a perk, this kind of stuff, that's kind of the general route that I kind of want people to take down. And that unless it's an exotic weapon, then most of the weapons will have specific niches in that, you do have these rapid firing, high critical weapons, or you have these weapons that are low reload, but they have nice perks and then like do reasonable damage, this kind of stuff. But if you want the really nice stuff, then you should be mixing together, working with your faction to actually create these. And again, this will change a bit once faction specialties come out as well, where there'll be some additional types coming out. There'll be different weapons that people can make, different chips that people can make to really kind of spice it up a bit. So one that we talked about already is like the molten damage one, which is super interesting. Obviously, there will be the gold damage type as well, which will be a new one. So yeah, I think that's the general aim. But I mean, this is what's going to be looked at, is to make sure this stuff is actually all balanced. Which may mean changing how quickly some weapons wear, for example, if they've got perks, that kind of stuff. But we'll see as we go along with that, to see kind of what works. Cool. Any other questions about anything that I've talked about? Or is there anything else that people want me to talk about? I think this battle that I'm playing here is going to end up going a long while, which is good because it's a battle cruiser against a mining platform. Well, as you notice as well, that the change was rolled out where the stacking damage is now limited to 200, which it seems to make a large difference, and I think a step in the right direction for that. General ship speed effect combat, that's all part of the same changes that I was talking about earlier with the tweaks, with the missing and the sector effects, all that kind of stuff. So that's the next thing that Beast will be working on after Terse Combat basically come out. They'll be working on adding that kind of stuff in. So probably that'll be starting next week. How much math does the research commander involve? Because I enjoy math, but I've heard research is mainly credit based. Yeah, so you need, well, it's not just credit based, it's commodity based as well. So you need a lot of credits and you need a lot of research, a lot of commodities to do it. There is math involved in one part of the research. You can research light drive, you can research shield, or you can research hull. So the shield one is the one that people consider math, although you don't really need to understand math, although it would make it easy because basically you have, I think, 4 or 5 parameters that you can change and try and get the desired frequency. So if you can understand the math, yeah, but it's more like a change this, see how it changes other values, and then keep going from that. So it's math in kind of that sense. It might be easy to understand if you have a math background. So yeah, it's only something to do if you have lots of credits and lots of commodities. That being said, research is extremely powerful because each level adds a lot. So for example, when you do shield research, level 1, if you do 1, it adds 1% to shield output for every single ship your faction pilots. For hull, it does the same thing. It adds 1% additional hull to every single ship your faction pilots. And then for light drive, it adds 1 light year per level, which sounds a bit rubbish, but then it makes some ships really powerful. So for example, the Predator, which only has 20 light years, you do some research on that, and then you've suddenly got a ship that can do 40 light years, 50 light years, all the way up to 120 light years, which is pretty powerful. And the same with other ships as well. It kind of helps out a lot, just having that kind of extra range for something like the Skipper to be able to add an additional 100 light years for doing some research for that. Although it would be extraordinarily expensive to do that, it's actually quite powerful. And a lot of factions just do a few levels in each one, particularly light drive range. Just adding an additional 2 or 3 light years helps quite a bit. Should some ship stats, hull and shields, be revisited to make other ships more relevant so not everyone fights in the capital? I think that's going to be addressed with a lot of these changes. So the speed change is going to make a big difference to that. The tiers is going to make a big difference. And I think it's perfectly reasonable in that, like, you can have a good wing of fighters taking the capital if they know what they're doing. But yeah, I think that can be looked at, but I think it's pretty good. Not a game-specific question, but what programming language do you use when you're coding the game? So TextSpaced is built on a custom flavor of PHP. So this is a custom flavor of PHP that was forked many years ago that has been developed by myself. That hasn't got a particular name. But essentially, I developed a custom flavor of PHP because I wanted something that was more object-oriented. I wanted something that was a lot more hardened, and something that I could just work with a lot easier. It stays with the main train of PHP, so I can still update it, so it is the most up-to-date as well. But it basically kind of is a lot more object-oriented. It has a lot more helpers, and it kind of forces you into the object class model, which is what TextSpaced is based on. So all of the back end is built in PHP. The game database is MySQL, and then the combat server is MongoDB. because it is all kind of object oriented as well, that means you can do a lot of cool stuff. The way that TextSpaced has been coded is to make it kind of semantic, so anyone can kind of pick up and kind of know what's going on. And what I mean by this is that obviously in TextSpaced you have a universe. A universe is comprised of sectors. Within sectors there are structures. There's also ships, but a structure can also have ships inside of it. It can also have commodities in its hull. And then a ship basically can have a player, essentially. So there's kind of that hierarchy there. And that's also built into the code as well. So in the code, you can basically do something like you can say, get me this sector ID, then get the structures there, and then tell me who's docked on those structures. Or you could say, get me the sector ID for this ID, get me this sector, this structure in this sector, and then get me this ship ID, and then give me the player, and then give me all the stats. So actually, when you write that in PHP, you can do something like this, which I'll type out now. Have you done any tests on ships versus structure combat? It seems with mass level 50 structures available, it's going to be quite feasible. Yeah, so there's two parts to that. So first of all, the structures are meant to be difficult to take down, that you can't really do them kind of as a lone ship. You really need to have either really nice weapons and then go back, repair, go back kind of thing. You need to really know what you're doing, or you need to come with your faction mates or take advantage of the situation. Obviously, because structures take a long while to repair unless someone's repairing it, so you have the advantage of being able to attack it, come back and attack, that kind of stuff. So structures are meant to be difficult to take down. That being said, I think the faction Grey Skulls is showing quite nicely how, if you know what you're doing, you can take structures down quite quick. So obviously they've been attacking for 2 days now, and Haven have mass upgraded all their structures to level 15, I think, or something like that, which is quite a reasonable level. And yet they've managed to take down, I think, 250 sectors in just 2 days, which is like 10% of like all the sectors they own, something like that. So I think it is possible. And obviously there's mechanics that help with that, like having artillery on the ship, which people don't tend to use, but artillery is like obviously the most powerful weapons in the game because they're meant to go against structures. Leveraging different stacking together, like for arc shields and for nuclear or hull, that kind of stuff. So I think it is possible, but again, like structures are not meant to be easy to take down. Like you should really go with your faction and take those down. Will there be any downsides to having all your structures at level 50, like more upkeep? I don't think the level plays into upkeep, from what I can remember. That was bad maths, was it? Yeah. Well, I don't know. I'm kind of following, I'm kind of not, but yeah. But you kind of get what I'm saying. Yeah, there's no real downside to having a level 50 structures, I guess, other than all the crew being level 50, so they're expensive if you want to kind of try and hire them. Maybe typing math now. Okay, 2.3%. 2.3%. Something you're having. So 2% in 2 days is pretty good, I think, for a faction of 3 people taking down structures like that. So that means in 50 days, they could theoretically wipe them out, supposedly, if all their structures are the same level. But yeah, there's currently no downside to having high-level structures. Having upkeep affected by level is interesting. I'm not sure how much sense that makes, but that's an interesting idea. Yeah, that's true. They are very well equipped. But I mean, there's nothing stopping anyone else getting gravity engines for one. But I mean, you don't have to use gravity engines, and gravity engines are only good against shields, really. They do like, I think, 250 damage against shields, and then like really small damage against hull. So there's other weapons that can do that, probably better as well. Like artillery against shield, like the shield buster artillery, whatever it's called, like that would be a similar effect as well. But yeah, they are flagships as well, which are pretty powerful. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean that's true as well. That it is quite expensive to upgrade structures. So yeah, I'm not sure how much sense it does make to penalize people for upgrading their own structures. I mean, then and when they do get destroyed, that's obviously a lot of lost money as well. Well, the only discounted way is the logistics commander that can mass upgrade them, and they get a bit of a discount, but it's still expensive to do. How much discount? Um, I think it works out like 20%, something like that. Yeah, is the better way to do it. Although obviously you can't selectively upgrade them, so basically you upgrade every single structure in your faction, and that means every single one. So everything from hideout to mining platform to whatever. And mining platforms at level like 50 are like pretty pretty hardy. Like they're basically like a level 1 fortress. I don't even know what am I fighting here, by the way? Who's I think I'm fighting a mining platform. Oh, it's one of yours. It's a Capitan platform. It's only level 1. So there you go. Well, you can see at level 1, this is not. This is pretty easy to take down. Some in a battle cruiser, I've only equipped 2 weapons, and they're really crap weapons that I bought a merchant, which is a dual cannon and a star cannon. And I'm on turn 35, and I've almost got its shields down. But yeah, I think I'm gonna get going. Okay, later, Paladine. Thanks for tuning in. Yeah, we're a little over time already. I think when I tried it, I did a dreadnought fitted nicely with artillery against a level 25 spatial fortress, and I think it took 100 turns to take it down. But I had like the best artillery on there, like the artillery that does over 200 damage, and I had all of the stacking as well. Yeah, it's yeah, it's taken long because I've only got 2 weapons fitted, and they're not very good, and I'm in a battle cruiser. It was almost killed me actually. Look, my shields have gone down. I've only got 481 hull. I'm actually surprised this battle cruisers last this long. I think if we had some arc weapons or some nuclear weapons, this thing would have gone down a lot easier. With like a mining platform, you know you've done something. Yeah. Yeah, that's what I mean. I like this. Like I said, this is a battle cruiser with two bad weapons, so I'm surprised I've lasted this long, to be honest. It's fine, probably. Yeah. I guess a boy could kill you, but I think it's being a shuttle, though. I don't think anything else would have. I think the shields would recharge higher and quicker than what you would get damage from a boy. It's not even. I'm not even sure a boy has a defensive thing. It's 10 assaults to a capital and goes after the money platforms. Yeah. Yeah, I can probably test that quite easily. I've got the fast combat going here, so it wouldn't be too difficult to test. Dreadnoughts are normally the best ones to do it with because they are the ones aimed for structure takedown because they have that lovely exotic that fires free turns even when it's not in the hand, which is a nice card, and it has the special of increasing damage as well. So yeah, that should be good. It'll also be interesting as well. So one of the things that I spoke about the last time was I think it is on the roadmap. Where is it? I think it's towards the end somewhere. Yeah, it's actually put down after the beta ends, like an additional thing they want to add, but it's essentially the idea of being able for structures having port space as well, so you can kind of fit out the structures how you want, which would be pretty cool. I used the Scorpio when I took down the river last time. Yeah, that's the one. Yeah, the Scorpio is a nice weapon because it has that perk. I think it's locked or whatever it's called, where it fires 3 turns afterwards or 2 turns afterwards, something like that. Which is really nice because if you have a couple of those fitted, it means you can. I think they fire every 2 turns or something. I don't know. This is. I'm not even sure if it will come up if I take this. No, I can't. You have to put that level in, don't you? Level. Yeah, so weapon's nice because it's critical is 60%, which is nice. So every other turn, you're basically guaranteed to increase the damage by 25%. The shield is 200, the hull is 150, and the cooldown is 3. And then it has the perk of locked, which basically it fires again for 2 turns afterwards, regardless of being in the hand or not. So what that means is you can basically have 3 fitted. You can hold fire, let the first one go on turn 3, and let the second one go on round 4, and let the third one go on round 5. And then after that, just let them fire when they're ready, which means then you then get 6 shots of artillery doing 200 shield damage every single turn, essentially, which is pretty nice because they'll all line up essentially. And that's excluding the critical as well, which they have a 60% chance critical. I think that's the nice thing as well, is that if you could find a nice demo expert to then reduce the cooldown on like a Scorpio, that's going to be a nice weapon. Removing all the nebulas, all the organic ones. Okay, so we've gone quite a bit over time. So any other final questions about anything that we spoke about before I log off? And hopefully as well, like I said, I should be able to get the wallpaper for the Rosewood class ship done hopefully sometime this week, if not the weekend or early next week. And I'll post those in high res in the supporters channel as wallpaper that you guys can use. And yeah, and then I'll hopefully see some people trying to complete the quests. So obviously the first part is collecting the holo concepts. So we'll see who can collect those first. How many stereos did Rosewood drop into the light rail reactor? Many. Homicons are appearing as elements requested in other missions that attended. I think I fixed that already, unless you've seen it recently. And the way I fixed that was making them all exotic, because when something's like level 10 exotic kind of thing, it shouldn't get requested by a crew member. Days ago. Was it to go and fetch one, or was it to go and find one and gather one? There's a difference. Go and gather one. Okay. Well, that's not good, because that's going to be difficult to do, and you probably don't want to give it to the person anyway. Did you say that was from a shipwright? Remember. Was it actually a oh, it was from the collector. Okay. A collector makes more sense, because I think a collector can request anything, basically anything that's exotic, so that would make more sense. So I think that's fine. If it is just a collector, that's fine, because that's what the collector does. And that's basically because that collector is trying to get those, because the faction bazaar, whichever faction bazaar that crew member is from, doesn't have a supply of them, obviously, because it's quite rare. So that collector is doing its job. So if you're lucky enough, maybe someone has some spares that will do that mission for that collector, and then your faction will suddenly have some in their bazaar, which is what they're meant to do anyway. So I think that's fine with the collector. If you was a shipwright though, then that shouldn't be happening. But was it I take it it was an actual obtain mission. I think it's called obtain, isn't it? And it wasn't like one of their Pacific missions. Yeah. Okay. That's fine. I can look at that. Level 15, yeah. Probably asking for some expensive stuff. Anyway, I think that's it from me. So thank you all for tuning in. And if you have any additional questions, then feel free to put it in questions or put it here or whatever, and I'm sure I can get to it. So yeah, thanks all for tuning in, and here's looking forward to a couple of weeks' time. Hopefully we'll have more to share, and hopefully someone really got a bit closer on getting the Rosewood file ship. Yeah, cheers everyone, and I'm gonna log off now.